Put the shiny ball.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Or is it tell people got you people put your heads, everybody else gave hair.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you all for coming. Real quick, just to lay some basic rules here. I first want to introduce everyone here. This is Lieutenant Colonel Leonard. He's our project, a PIO. So basically, he's the background work that goes into the KC-46 project at the installation. And our 305th Air Mobility Wing Commander, Colonel Wiederholt. He can talk to the active duty side and the overall project. And then Colonel Brine here, who's our Vice Commander of the 514th, well versed with the reserve side, aeromedical aspects. And then our 87th Air Base Wing Vice Commander, Colonel McAllister, who has been here for a very long time and can speak to a lot of things, Joint Base McGuire. We're just going down the line. You have one question with a follow-up, and we'll just take it as we go through. It's about 30 minutes. Any questions that we don't know, we'll definitely follow up and get you the answers too. And then just so you know, when they do answer, we are going to allow them to take their mask down to make that answer for you so it's more clear for everyone. Any questions before we start? All right, great. We'll start with you, Courtney.
Great. I guess to start off, can you speak just a little bit to the significance of getting the first two aircraft, kind of some of the work that you've been doing to prepare leading up to that, and just kind of what it will mean for the mission here?
Oh, you?
Sure, I'll take that one. So receiving the KC-46 is a tremendous improvement and advancement in our capabilities to provide air refueling to the warfighter, but new advanced capabilities as well, whether it's the dual, we can refuel with the drogue and the boom at the same time. It also brings some new integrated technologies, battle space awareness capabilities that we'll be able to integrate to better prepare our aviators and for the future fight.
Okay. As a follow-up, I know that Air Mobility Command has approved the KC-46 for some operational work. Will the aircraft that you're getting here, will they be available for that, immediately, or what does that look like?
Sure. So what I think you're referencing is the interim capabilities release.
Yes.
And it's exactly what it sounds like. It is the capabilities of approached a way that they're on board in a weapon system. So anytime you bring a new weapon system into the service, you can imagine there's a lot of training, there's parts, there's supply, all that goes with it. When we receive, we'll only have 2 of them as of today. And so our maintainers will have to receive that, go through their checks and procedures. Our air crew, we have air crew in training right now, and so they're going through all that evolutions along with those. And so it's kind of, for us, it'll be, as we receive aircraft, we'll begin to fly them on local training sorties. At the Air Mobility Command level, so the Air Mobility Command Commander has approved certain different iterations for us to refuel aircraft. And so as those get approved, they will allow us to execute those in a real mission versus just on training sorties. So I don't expect the 305th or the 514th to actually execute tasked missions for about 1 year's time. Because it's going to take us about that long to get a squadron fully up to speed, get all of our air crew and maintainers ready to generate, fly, and then operate the aircraft. And I would say that that's pretty normal whenever you receive a weapon system.
Okay.
Hello, Pat Wilson James. Is the Remote Vision System 2.0 the fix for the Category 1 deficiency still on track for 2023?
I'll defer to Clint.
So you probably have to defer to AMC for the official, but that's what our office is tracking on, is about that 2023 timeframe.
All right, thanks. Is the KC-46 authorized or capable of refueling NATO and Allied aircraft?
I can sort of answer that question. From my previous job, I was Director of Air Refueling at TACC. So that's our 618th Air Operations Center. And so with the interim capability release, that approximately 70% of our assets in the DoD we can refuel right now. In terms of the full interoperability with NATO, we're not quite there yet. But in terms of our U.S. assets, about approximately 70% they can refuel on transcom missions. We'll go the whole breadth, whether it be C-17s, B-52s, 410 fighters like that, 15 and F-16s. And my previous job, we were moving with that interim capability release to try to slowly do other movements of fighters worldwide. Cornet movements is what we would call those. And at the same point, when we have a large bomber task force moving somewhere as a power projection, refueling B-52s and those assets is going to allow us to you know, enable that force projection, you know, anytime, anywhere. So we're moving towards that. So approximately 70% as of right now. Not quite with all of our NATO partners, but we're getting after it.
So what's the plan for getting compatibility with NATO partners for the fuel?
Clint can answer that.
Well, I would just refer back to the releases that we're going to see from Air Mobility Command. It's a part of the entire interim capabilities release program. You know, from our perspective, we fall under U.S. Transportation Command, and so as those weapon systems get approved through that process, we will be tasked to support those weapon systems when it comes to NATO and the support of our allies in that regard. I'll have to defer to AMC and Transportation Command as to how that's going to be executed.
All right, thanks.
At the baseline though, just the ability to both have rogue and new operations on this platform is tremendously helpful regardless of who we're working with, whether it's our joint partners or our international partners. That's the key part of it.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
Great, thanks. Abraham Asher, Air Force Magazine, glad to be here. Thank you guys so much. So, can you comment on your satisfaction with the quality of the aircraft that you are going to be receiving, and are all the components working? Specifically, the refueling visual display system. Are you happy with that? With where things are coming along?
So the Air Force goes through a pretty rigorous process whenever they accept an aircraft. And we work closely with the Program Integration Office, with AMC headquarters, and with our Boeing partners in the process of receiving those aircraft. And so we wouldn't sign or accept unless the Air Force has accepted and is happy with the result. And so as we go through those things, we'll work through it. What I will say is, you know, my background is C-17s, and I was in the C-17 when it was first coming online. And like any weapon system, there's challenges and upgrades and block upgrades that occur throughout the life cycle of that aircraft. It's going to be similar with the KC-46, which is why we're seeing the interim capabilities release program as well. So that allows us, as certain parts get certified and approved, for us to execute those missions as tasked. And so the aircraft is pretty capable of arriving in its current condition. As you can attest, you know, we can refuel up to 70% of the weapon systems out there now. It's still going through its interoperable test and evaluation construct, and so as they solidify and finalize those elements, they'll certify them for us to use on operational missions.
Sure, I've got another question. Sort of as KC-10s are phased out, and the new 46 is not fully operational yet. I mean, the refueling capability is diminishing. What are your thoughts about America's refueling capability going on?
So you're talking about the airlift, the air refueling capacity that we provide to the warfighter. Yeah. That is the key component of the interim capabilities release. And so what that capabilities-based construct allows U.S. Transportation Command and Air Mobility Command to provide to the warfighter is there's certain refueling events that the KC-46 has already been executing in its IOT&E, in its initial operational training and evaluation process already. And so what the Air Force is saying is, hey, we're already refueling these types of receivers successfully. We have, we can certify those for operational use now. And so the KC-46 will take up that bandwidth in certain elements and mission taskings to allow the main tanker force, the KC-135 and the remaining KC-10s to continue to deploy and operate around the world and in other capacities.
And I would say TRANSCOM, from my previous job, TRANSCOM and Air Mobility Command, they have a plan to augment, during this transition period over the next several years. So there is a plan that they're implementing, augmenting with other KC-135, to help with that diminished capacity that you may think that we have. So in terms of our adversaries, we still have the ability and the capacity with about 68% of our tankers are in the Guard and Reserve. So we rely on that. So we are going to rely on the Guard and Reserve with some other additional options to try to help bridge that gap over the next several years. But AMC and TRANSCOM, they are getting after that problem set, and there should be no challenges in terms of our air refueling capacity, long term.
I'll add that too. We're continuing to fly KC-10 operations out of McGuire here. So just because we're getting our first 2 KC-46 aircraft today doesn't mean that the tanker mission stops for the KC-10 by any means. So that capacity is something we continue to provide here, even as we spool up our KC-46 operations.
Can you guys help me understand how you augment with the same number of refuelers?
So we were going to use MPA at TAC, which is sort of we are providing additional funds out to the Guard and Reserve in order to get more KC-135 capacity. It's on a volunteer status, but in order to get that, then we still have some of that going towards the KC-10 at both locations at Travis and McGuire with reserves. And so that was sort of the plan moving forward, to try to augment that in order to help with that diminished gap. But the reality of it is we have the KC-10 here, even though it's divesting through 2023, and you have it at Travis through 2024. So by the time the KC-46 should be fully up in the next two years or so, then we should be well past that. And along with the interim capabilities release, we will continue to evolve with what the KC-46 can do. So there should be no diminished capacity.
It's not just about managing tails, it's about managing people. Because there are a lot of limitations, right, in getting an airplane off the ground. So, as Preach mentioned, it's about making sure that we have the correct trained people in the right place at the right time to execute missions, and that's all forecast. And we've been working on that for a long time as a joint force, making sure that we can continue to put booms in the air and provide that tanker capability worldwide by sharing the burden across all of our installations.
Thank you so much.
Carol?
I'm with Gannett and USA Today Network in New Jersey. And so for the layman that I will be writing for, could you explain a little bit about the overall differences between the current KC-10 and 135 and the new plane in terms of the size? And I know it has some multiple capabilities that some others don't have. So if you could talk a little bit about the size of this plane as well, it would be helpful for our readers.
So I don't have the actual specs on there right now. I can tell you the KC-46 is larger than the 135, but smaller than the KC-10. I would say the biggest difference that the KC-46 is going to bring is that kind of advanced comm system, a little bit more of some defense systems, so we can operate a little bit more in the contested environment. Technology continues to improve, so there will be a little bit better fuel flow. Those are kind of the big differences. But again, I guess we've hit on it a lot, that interim capability release, I think, and IoT needed. We're going to, at the end of both of those, I think we're really going to be able to hone in on how different it really is. I mean, right now, it's like I said, still in testing, lots of different things we're going through. So we won't fully know until then, but right now, we do know it'll be a little bit better fuel flow and be able to operate a little bit more contested environment.
Is there a single major issue that had to be resolved during the planning and construction of this airplane and when they finished the initial plans? Was there some stumbling block, some major issue that they had to address?
Yeah, I would probably defer to Boeing and Air Mobility Command on that one. We wouldn't have the specifics of that type of to provide a great answer for you on that one at our level, at the wing level. We're more concerned about what we need to do to receive the aircraft,
right, and the operational,
and the operating of it, making sure the crews are trained and our maintainers are ready to generate.
We're not really involved in the development and the acquisition part, we're the operations piece.
Yeah, Randy Jackson from Boeing.com. This is an emotional day for McGuire. The men and women here, the airmen and women, also for the warfighters that will be on the front line. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so special?
I think it's special anytime a new weapon system is coming to a new base. This is the first time in my career where I'm going to be at an installation that receives a new weapon system for the first time, right? And so it's a sign of advancement. It's a sign of that this installation is valued not only for its strategic location, but it's valued with the ties that we have with the local community here. It's recognition that our senior leaders see this as a strategic launching platform to address national security interests around the world. And so Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst has got a pretty good reputation around the community for being a place to execute those types of missions. Even if you just look around and what's happening just broadly across the installation now, a pretty popular place. And it will continue to be so, and the arrival of the KC-46 is a key part of that. On the emotional piece, you know, as a crew dog and as an aviator, everyone's always sad maybe to see one of their weapon systems retire and to go off into the boneyard. And let me tell you, we are operating the KC-10 and we are sunsetting that weapon system with class and with the honor that it deserves for its faithful service it's provided to the United States Air Force. At the same time, we are excitedly welcoming the KC-46 and for all the new things that it will bring to our Air Force.
So I'll pick up on that too. As the 514th, the Associate Reserve Wing to the 305th, we're incredibly excited to be a part of this. We share planes already with the 305th, whether it's on the C-17 side or the KC-10 side. We've been operating with them for years now, and this is just the next evolution in our partnership at this joint base. So for us, it's great. It means you know, future workforce here in the state of New Jersey, a place for us to keep all the talent that leaves active duty and comes over to the reserve side when they decide to mature and make better decisions in life. And we can retain that capability, right, for the nation. So we're excited to keep doing that for years and years to come. Preach, you probably got something for the base, right?
Yeah, and I'll say, as a longtime KC-10 guy, that's the only weapon system I've flown. I've been here for 12 years at McGuire. There is a little bit of sadness, but Colonel Wiederholt's right on. Like, we're going to send out the KC-10 with class. I had the honor of taking the first one to the boneyard over a year ago. And so the maintainers here that are part of the 305th, both in the 305th and 514th, they're doing their very best. And we're going to sunset that weapon system both here at McGuire and Travis with dignity and grace, because it has done a phenomenal amount of effort post 9/11, even pre 9/11, and a standard of excellence in that weapon system. And my hope is that across the joint base and the total force, we will have that standard of excellence transition over to the 46, and so that we can take it to the next generation and beyond. Because there's certain mission sets from my previous job at TC that we can't do with the KC-10, but the KC-46 will be able to do. You know, and that JAD-C2, joint all-domain, you know, and battle space awareness and other things in contested and great environments, it's going to do a lot of things that are going to enable the relevance. And so in the relevance of this base strategically, Northeast corridor, it's the only active duty tanker base in the Northeast. And it's an air mobility wing here. So you have a crown jewel of JBMDL, both in the 87th, the 514th, and the 305th, and then the 621 and the 108th. Across the spectrum here of a very special base with everything that it brings to the joint fight and the total force fight.
Thank you. Jerry, do you want to add anything? Any questions? Thank you.
Yes. Pat referenced the remote visual system upgrade. I was just curious. I know that the Air Force has approved kind of an interim enhanced RVS. Will the aircraft you're receiving have that upgrade, or is that a little further out? Do you know?
So my understanding is that it will not, that will be come down the road.
Okay.
But it should happen relatively quickly. I mean, obviously that's a vague term, but I mean, they're rolling it out, so it should happen sooner than later.
Okay. And the other question I was going to ask, what is the, I guess, I know it's the first 2 aircraft to come, but what is the delivery cadence that you all are expecting over the next year or so? And
Sure.
I don't know if you addressed this when you were talking about kind of phasing out the KC-10, but can you talk a little bit about kind of that cadence as well of phasing out and how it matches this?
Sure. So McGuire is scheduled to receive 24 total KC-46s. Under the current delivery time frame, we should be complete with delivery sometime in fiscal year 23. And that will adjust throughout the time. There's a couple of other main operating bases that have to receive some aircraft yet. So we're receiving these 2 today, and then I expect early next calendar year to begin deliveries. And they should occur on about a monthly or so basis. Similarly, on the KC-10 side, we're programmed for the McGuire fleet to be divested by the end of fiscal year 23, and then for the Travis fleet to begin their divestment fiscal year 24. And so there may be a time when we have an equal number of KC-10s and KC-46s on the ramp here, but I can't exactly predict when that schedule is going to roll.
Okay, okay.
So I understand that there's a lot of challenges involved with training air crews and maintainers to go from digital aircraft analog aircraft like the legacy refuelers to a digital aircraft like the KC-46. I'm wondering if you can tell me what your strategy is to get these air crews and maintainers up to speed on this new aircraft, and perhaps if you could tell me a little bit about what's analog about the old aircraft and what's digital about the new aircraft.
I can probably take the first part.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so getting all these maintainers and operators trained, Colonel Wiederholt alluded to it earlier, we're not going to be flying like say next week. It's going to be a deliberate process. But right now we have about a 2 to 3 month schedule that we've projected out of, hey, we think we can fly about every other day, and in the meantime, a certain organization is going to have it in between this day, and then on this other day, it's going to be another organization, and we're going to dedicate that time to them and let them do it. I would say the first 3 months is going to be really focusing on the maintainers as opposed to the operators, but eventually, as we get closer to that December date, that will obviously switch a little bit as we try to get it more advanced. But I would say we're looking ahead, and we're trying to be very deliberate in making sure that everybody gets I don't want to say too much time, because but the necessary time plus a little padding, so they can make sure that they are ready to go, and then they're comfortable doing that once we're ready to start actually flying.
If I can pick up on the training piece there, the training doesn't start today when the airplanes show up. The training started a year ago. We've been putting people through training, whether they're on the maintenance side, the operation side, pilots and goons for a long time now, and setting them out, for not just regular training, but maintaining the training that they've had throughout the past several months. So we get a head start on that, and we're planning that accordingly. So it does take a long time to get to fully operational and have more planes than we have. But this is a well-oiled machine that's been moving for a long time now.
Sure. What's different that you have to train people for on the 46th compared to the legacy refuelers?
Sure. So the KC-46 brings advanced avionics, data links, situational awareness tools, defensive capabilities. Those types of things I think are going to be for some will be a major change. But here's what I think is important about this whole transition. Is we're developing a new culture, right? This is not going to be the KC-135 culture. It's not going to be the KC-10 culture. It's going to be the KC-46 culture. And so along with that, we are bringing in and cross-training folks from other weapon systems, right? We're bringing in folks that fly the C-130. We're bringing in folks that flew the C-17 and training them in the KC-46. So when they come in and they're building what and how we're going to employ the 46, that we get after those mission sets. And so, look, the way that we train our crews and the way that we build them up and the different courses that we're going to send them to throughout their journey to get qualification is pretty in depth, and it's going to be fun to watch and fun to watch that culture grow, and we're still learning and adapting the ecosystem, if you will, as to how we're going to employ that, and our customers or the warfighters that we're going to support are going to learn those things too and begin requesting it, and that's a natural evolution in any new weapon system.
Thanks.
You bet.
Colonel Rob, I wonder if you could clarify the number of operators you've got currently who are trained up, and you guys are going to be doing training instead of line people out? And then a question for Colonel.
So on the active duty side, I know right now we have at least 40 to 45 maintainers trained. I think when you include the total force, we're in the mid-60s. Higher than that, probably around 80 is where we're at right now. Crew-wise, I don't have those exact numbers. It's somewhere around 5, I want to say, is the total number of crews that we have. But we have just as many in training right now, receiving their qualifications, and so they'll be coming back from training in the coming weeks and months. We are receiving McConnell Air Force Base is the other active duty KC-46 base, and so we receive qualified crew members through a normal permanent change of station process that we have in the military, where we're receiving qualified pilots as well. And so we'll have more than enough to operate the aircraft as we're receiving them to keep them flying and keep busy. And similarly on the maintenance side as well. What we have to balance on the maintenance side is making sure that we can maintain our KC-10 generation capacity while at the same time transitioning and training those maintainers in the KC-46. And so our professionals in the maintenance community are doing a pretty fantastic job of managing that piece, and I'm confident that there are going to be no issues on that.
And then, Colonel McAllister, could you talk a little bit more about that flight that you made on the KC-10 to Boeing, what you were kind of going through your mind when you did that? And also, I wonder if, I mean, presumably you've been up in the KC-46.
I haven't been out, but I have lots of.
You've seen it, you've talked to pilots.
Yeah.
And then, so I wonder if you'd also reflect on sort of looking forward, like this was my career, the bulk of my career,
right.
And I would be excited because of these things that I saw.
So we took the first one to the Boneyard on July 13, 2020. Colonel Wiederholt came up and met me. I was sort of abnormality. I'll call myself a unicorn. I was a commander in the reserves in the 514th, but it was a mixed crew. So we had myself, Lieutenant Colonel Pillion, Lieutenant Colonel Ulmer, and a mixed crew with the reserve and active duty, because we wanted to be a total force taking the KC-10, because we've been integrated here since 1994 at JBMDL. At that time, it was just McGuire and the 305th. And so it was an honor for me to take the first one from McGuire and the first one in the whole fleet, to the Boneyard. And so a little bit of sadness, but at the same point, just you're very reflective on your career. So I've been flying the KC-10 since 2001 to now. There are reservists that have been flying the KC-10 from the late 80s to now that have 70,000 hours in the KC-10. I have about 5,000 on the active duty side in the KC-10. But a lot of pride, is what I would say with that weapon system. A lot of love for that weapon system, but it can't compete, with what the KC-46 will bring to the fight. And so with the KC-46, I think all of us here are aircrew. We love aircrew. We love our culture. We love where we grew up, where we cut our teeth. I deployed a lot post 9/11, but what I will say is the KC-46, they're going to continue where the KC-10 was and take it to the next generation. KC-135, for example, can only refuel either drogue or boom. They will put on a boom drogue adapter, so it can only do one or the other. KC-10 could do both, and we could, with certain pods, do two fighters at the same time. KC-46 will have all that capability. We used to deploy, and a KC-135 would dump in 50K in us before they would feed. So we keep more fuel in the AOR over Afghanistan and Iraq to give fuel to fighters and bombers to protect the Marine Corps and the Army on the ground. And so that KC-46 has the URC, so just like the C-17, just like the KC-10. So now you can force extend that tanker and keep it up longer, to enable protection of the warfighter or to enable giving, additional fuel offload. So there are those things that I think the KC-46 is just going to take it to the next generation. And we need that with all the threats that we have out there. We need to divest the KC-10 and move forward with this next generation of tanker.
Is it frustrating then that there are problems that are slowing it down, that it's not fully operational yet? How do you deal with that?
Well, like Colonel Wiederholt said, you talk about the C-17 when it came on in the 90s, and anytime there's a major weapon system acquisition, there's going to be these challenges, right? But we're going to overcome that. We're going to be resilient. We're going to do everything we can between, the acquisitions, the manufacturer, whether it be Boeing, and the aircrew and the maintainers to overcome that. And so I think that's a natural progression. There were lots of challenges in the mid to late 90s with the C-17, and they overcame that. And we're going to do the same thing with this weapon system. And it's going to be very capable that it's going to be flying for the next 40, 50, 60 years. And we have KC-135s that are from the 1958, 62 era that are supposed to be on the books until 2040, just like the B-52. So at some point, right, we needed this, and it's the right platform at the right time.
All right, one more. Carol, I want to give you an opportunity to ask another question. There's also the Randy if you want to do more. So we're down to our last few minutes here. So Carol, go ahead.
We're all good, thanks, Eric.
Any other last questions? Anyone else?
Yeah, we're looking for you. You got it on there. All right, let me, give me a second.
It's a combination of a unicorn and Pegasus.
It's one and the same.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I was wondering, Colonel McAllister kind of touched on this, but what exactly about the KC-46 will allow you to better perform the aerial refueling mission? The aircraft does not hold as much as one of the legacy tankers, but
What is it about the platform that will allow you to better perform aerial refueling?
Yeah. Right, where you can perform the mission is the biggest difference,
I'm
right?
sorry,
Where you
where?
can perform the mission, right?
Where? Why where?
Colonel Leonard talked about earlier. The ability to operate in contested environments
Contested
is
environments.
a dramatic advance in capability for this airplane. That matters when you're, conducting a war.
Of course. Can you-
Connectivity will be a big issue too, right? This tanker on the data front is going to represent advancements in that area as well, and so that's going to allow the tanker to better communicate out to their receivers in the joint force in a way that's never been done before. And so it maybe is not the physical aspect of passing fuel, but the physical aspects of passing data will be in leaps and bounds forward as to what we've been able to do before. And so the KC-46 is a new weapon system. It's not necessarily a replacement for the KC-10. It is a new weapon system that brings new capabilities and new ways to think about how we're going to execute global reach, rapid global mobility, and in a contested environment and whatever the warfighter needs.
So what about the aircraft allows you to execute the mission in contested environments? Do you have countermeasure systems? And could you elaborate on the communications being improved? What's so special about that?
Yeah, so it has defensive systems on board. It has data link capability on board, and in this setting, that's probably about the depth that I'll be able to go into it, right? But the KC-10 doesn't have that. The KC-135 is limited in its capability with that, and so this will be able to link in with the newer gen fighter systems. When we talk about the Air Force talks about the air battle management system in the larger JADC2 construct. This tanker will play and grow into that new role, and then learn how to operate that new environment.
All right, so
I'd also add just to that, I mean, there's another important role that it plays that's relevant to us here at McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst and 514th in particular, and it is that air medical evacuation mission that we perform here. And KC-46, like our other aircraft, will have an important role there. It's a multi-role, flexible aircraft that allows us to not only be an incredible air mobility asset, but an incredible humanitarian asset at times. So that's a critical piece that's, I think, important for us in our role here at McGuire.
Thank you.
So any other questions, let me know. We'll follow up and get you the responses to those. If you want to gather your stuff now, we'll move over to the hangar and get set up for the next round.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.